Well, hey, gang, we've got an awesome episode of the Higher Line podcast. I've got my buddy Ryan Cleckner on that I like to call the ATF fighter. We are going to cover all kinds of topics, including his work fighting the ATF for your rights. We're going to dig right in now with shooting legend Ryan Cleckner. Welcome to another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. Well, hey, welcome to yet another episode of the Carry Trainer Higher Line podcast. I've got an old friend, past guest, best-selling something, and we're going to chat with Mr. Ryan Cleckner today. Bennett just handed me some water, and it had the Ranger crest on it, or some look-alike Ranger crest. And Ryan, once upon a time, was a Ranger sniper. You're a lawyer. You're an author. You're a dad. You try to be funny. It never works with me anyway. And you've still got sweet hair. What else are you? Business
people
guy?
People with a sense of humor find me funny. Yeah, I'm a not currently, but I was a professor at a university.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
I do too much, man. It's exhausting to list all the things I do. And to some people, it sounds impressive. Like the more things I could list, the better. But really, it just means I'm not good at any of them. So I keep jumping from one thing to the next.
That's not true. That's not true. So I reached out to you. I wanted to talk about a few things. We've had you on past podcasts, and I'll link that for people to see those. One of the things I think you're most known for in the community of shooters is your long-range shooting prowess. You have multiple books. One of them I've got next to me, which we'll talk about. It's the Advanced Long Range, which came after the first version of it, the Long Range Shooter's Handbook or Shooting Handbook. Both great books. I want to dig into those a little bit, but before we talk about that, maybe give the listeners, viewers, just a little backstory on why you have the skill set to write such books.
Okay. Yeah, like you said, I was a sniper in 1st Ranger Battalion. Went to SOTIC, which it's got a new name now, the Special Operations Target Interdiction Course, which in my opinion is the kind of the premier graduate level sniper course in the world because of who goes there. I've jokingly called it the Noah's Ark of snipers because as you show up, it's like 2 Delta guys, 2 SEALs, 2 SF guys, 2 Rangers, 2 FBI, CIA, all 2 by 2 to a classroom of like 20 people.
And who is created and hosts and runs this course? Is that the Army?
Yeah, it's at the Army. It's on Fort Bragg. It's at the Special Forces Warfare Center. So
Okay.
SWIC is what runs it. It's on. So back when I went, there wasn't GPS on phones, right? It's on the map. Back when I went, it was not on the map. It was so secret squirrel cool. Now everyone knows where it is. But it's a really cool special operations part of Fort Bragg, called Range 37 now. It's a public, people call it that, or the McRidge Triangle Compound. Spent 2 months out there, and the hardest part about that course was pretending like I knew what I was doing. I was the youngest by far, and definitely the least experienced. I had just gone over to the sniper section. There's only 6 Ranger snipers at a time, and 1 got out, and so we all put our hat in the ring to try and see who was going to get the open slot, and I ended up with it. And I think within a week, they said, hey, we all have to go to this training mission over here, so we can't go. Since you don't know what you're doing, you can't go on the training mission, so why don't you go to SOTIC instead? So the first time I fired an M24 sniper rifle was in SOTIC, and I'm in with all these other students who've been professional snipers for years. So faking it until I could make it is really a big part of my military.
So my recently deceased friend Dave Harrington ran one of the programs at Range 37. I know a little bit about that place. And usually the guys that go there, from his stories, were, like you just said, professionals in whatever their skill set was, assaulting. And so you had no long range experience professionally?
Well, I've been a shooter, but no long range. No, not
shooting the M4 and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I kind of got in under the radar, and I'm talking to guys that have been to, regular Army sniper school first. They've gone to this sniper school. They've gone to the FBI sniper school. They've done all these things.
So you hadn't done that either. You didn't go to the Army school down at Fort Benning. No. Okay.
No. So I was a Ranger. on a line platoon. So I did a regular Ranger line squad. Did quite a bit of breaching experience. It was a very often the number two man in the 4-man stack. Loved it, but there's a lot of hard work and a lot of hazing and a lot of everything that goes on your first year or so in a Ranger battalion. And so I got a chance to go over there. So I was good with the rifle. I knew how to shoot, but Men of the Vangle, I was scribbling notes like you wouldn't believe and trying to pretend like I wasn't hearing all this for the first time, trying to keep up with everyone else. It was a lot of fun.
Is there a story where somebody that you were with that like I'm sure some of them knew that you were new to this, but at some point was somebody like, "What the hell are you doing here?"
No, I told him. I
Oh, you
told him.
did.
I figured my best chance of survival was if these guys helped me to make sure I was okay. And I ended up not needing the help. I ended up being fine. But some of the terminology, I showed up and they partnered you up with somebody. And so I was partnered up with a 10th Special Forces group sniper. And I was like, dude, I've this is my first time firing an M24. Like, as an instructor sitting behind you, the first round out of an M24 for me, even making it go bang once is in Sodic, like the place to go. And now it's Special Forces Sniper course, I think, but at the time it was Sodic and Sephardic were the courses that Dave probably was part of. Anyway, yeah, so the instructors, I mean, they're going to know right away, but you pick it up. And one of my criticisms of military sniper course, not sniper courses, all courses in the military, is that they're not very good. Meaning
Now that was
they,
funny.
they, if you talk to guys in the military, and especially if you're in the military with them and you're talking, oh, I'm going to go to this course. And they, in the Army, we wear all of our badges and qualifications on your uniform. You're like, oh, this school, oh yeah, this school's super tough. It's got a 50% attrition rate. That is how they'll brag about the school, is the attrition rate. How many people fail out and don't make it to the end, or how hard it is, to finally make it through. When I got into Ranger Battalion, I had to go through what was called RIP at the time, the Ranger Indoctrination Program. We started with 126 and they took 12. And they told us that day one, we're taking 12. So it's going to get worse and worse until enough of you quit till we get down to 12. That's how they bragged about how cool something was. My problem with that is that's a test. That's not a school. So the instructors on day one of SODIC would talk about more than half of you will be gone in the first 3 weeks or first 4 weeks of this course. And all I thought was, that means you're a bad instructor. Like, if you're the guy that's teaching me how to do this and you're threatening I'm probably going to be kicked out because I can't do it, well, then maybe you should teach me better. So this military schools are very often tests instead of schools. They'll throw information at you. A lot of this information is outdated. I mean, I went pre 9/11, which means we were learning Vietnam era sniper skills. We weren't learning what we kind of morphed into these modern sniper skills that we learned in Afghanistan and Iraq. So I'm still learning vegetation and fauna like I'm in Vietnam from some of the skills and techniques. And some of the things they taught were just wrong. I learned to shoot well, though. So they would have every 2-man team all day. You were at the range all day, every day. And they would have a coach that was just for you two behind you on this beautiful spotting scope, watching you shoot all day, every day, and giving you pointers. So it's kind of like being an Olympic shooting team type thing with a coach behind you. Made me a really competent shooter. Now, whether I learned all the atmospherics and all everything else depends on if I hit the targets or not. But I made it. Yeah, your first 2 weeks, you only get iron sights in the sling. So you have to earn your scope. So that at the 2 weeks in, you have the test to make. And I think you're shooting to 800 off of a sling and iron sights with an M24. And if you pass and you stay on the course, then they issue your bipod legs and your scope, which I always thought
That's
was kind
pretty
of cool
cool.
too. Yeah, you learn the basics first.
What size targets were you shooting at those distances with irons and no bipod?
Oh, I have no idea. I don't remember. I'd like to lie and say something really tiny, but it was probably a big target.
But I mean, it wasn't like you were shooting like a half MOA target at freaking.
No. I would bet it was a 3-minute angle target or more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still really awesome.
Well, you got to see it. 800 yards is
Yeah,
hard to see
yeah.
with your naked eye, in the iron sights, and the problem is not the size of the target with iron sights, it's the wind. It's how do you adjust and hold for wind with iron sights? So you need to hold 1.5 mil left. What's 1.5 mil with an iron sight? So we were actually clicking. We had little micrometer adjustments on the metallic sight, the metal sight. You're reaching up and click, 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 moving your ghost ring peep sight at the back.
That's cool.
Or the palm iron. This is really cool. Yeah, and you learn how to shoot. You were doing all the positions. You were at 200 and 300, you were doing standing. I think at 400, you were doing some seated and kneeling and then prone out to 800. And there's a lot of life lessons I learned from that. The book I'm working on now is trying to take kind of life lessons I learned as being a sniper. And so one of these nuggets, as I was standing there at the coach, you have your little stool and your little shooting glove, like the NRA high power style shooting with the sling. And you would stand and you get ready, you pick the rifle up and you get settled in and you're wobbling and you're trying to shoot it. And you'd always get 2 sighters, 2 warm up shots before you were scored. And I was sometimes doing well on those 2 sighters. And the instructor's like, "Hey, Ranger Cleckner, come here. You've only got so many hits in your life. Don't waste them on the warm-ups." Like you get the misses out of the way now. Don't get the hits out of the way now. And I remember that being funny to me. I was trying so hard to do it. He's like, "Have fun with these 2. They don't count. Save it till later till it counts." Anyway, so that training was great.
That's actually pretty interesting. I disagree with him, but go ahead.
Yeah. I like to tell people,
damn it.
I like to tell people the opposite. So I told my youngest daughter when she's learning to ride her bike, she kept falling because that's what you do when you first start to learn to ride a bike. I came up to her and I took the opposite. And so this is the life lesson I took from that. I said, "Hey, look, you have a certain number of falls off of a bike in your life. You're going to need to accomplish that. Those falls are going to have to happen. I don't know if it's 10 falls. I don't know if it's 20 falls, but you're going to need to fall 20 times until you get good at this. So let's be thankful you just fell because now you got one of them out of the way and you've only got 14 left. Let's go." So it's kind of like a mindset of letting her know that get it out of her system. Anyway, Afghanistan twice, bunch of cool other schools. I did the French Alpine mountaineering course, lots of stuff like that, but I didn't learn shooting, which is I think what your question was, or how to teach shooting until I left the military. I was a sniper instructor when I left and teaching long range shooting for a few years and learning how to distill seemingly complex topics into something that was tangible and executable by someone actually on the line, or coaching and looking at someone and recognizing that they're not just missing. My advice shouldn't be shoot better. I'm looking at them and saying, "Oh, it looks like they're fighting their rifle this way. Oh yeah, they are doing that. Let me figure out a way to explain to them what the problem is, give them a fix that makes sense, and let's see if it improves." And by doing that for years, I kind of learned my own brand of what I think works for long range shooting. And I challenge quite a few things that people took for granted in shooting that they swore were the way. I actually argue the opposite. So when that orange book came out, the Long Range Shooting Handbook, almost 10 years ago now, some of the things in that were unorthodox. If I can give myself some credit, I think they've now been kind of adopted. I don't know if it was all because of me, but when it came out, there are some unorthodox things in there about what matters in shooting and what doesn't. And
can you give me an
theories.
example?
Spin of the earth, Coriolis effect. So that's the easiest example. So snipers, quote fingers, snipers, long range shooters, precision rifle, these guys very commonly want to protect their group. And they want to say, "This is so hard and this is so tough and mystical. And I'm so good at math and science. And I'm this oracle when it comes to reading wind. And I have this sniper fairy dust that I'm sprinkling on this rifle because I did these like goose frabas when I mounted my scope a certain way. And I did all this stuff that only I can do this. That's how awesome I am." And I see a lot of guys in the sniper community that are that way. And I tried to approach it with the book in, that's BS. You all can do this. It's not that hard. The trick is to stop worrying about all this other crap. And so the spin of the earth is an easy, cheap example. Is I would get asked by students quite often, "Well, doesn't the spin of the earth matter where the bullet impacts?" Yeah, you shoot far enough, at a far enough distance, and at the right location on the earth. Yes, the spin of the earth does affect the path of the bullet through the air. However, you're going to jerk the trigger and make a greater miss than the spin of the earth is going to matter. You're going to fail to focus on the reticle. You're not going to have a good stable platform. You're going to have the wrong dope dialed in your scope. You're going to have the wrong wind call, yada, yada, yada. All these things matter way more than the spin of the earth. And if you're sitting here thinking about the spin of the earth and you can't even shoot to a certain level yet, then stop it. Same thing's true with like ballistic software. I think Kestrels and ballistic software are awesome. They're the greatest advancement we've had in long range shooting. They're what allow us to do things regularly that were just uncommon feats of shooting before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
However, I see literal, actual active military snipers with their nose in their ballistic software or their Kestrel instead of shooting.
Mm.
And I used to joke that if I was ever in this Hollywood counter sniper scenario, which I never will be, but where we're two snipers hunting each other, like enemy at the gates, I hope the other guy swears by that software so much because I want to shoot him through his Kestrel. Because I'm going to shoot and I'm going to miss low. I'm going to miss 2 feet low. I'm going to reload. I'm going to aim 2 feet higher, shoot and hit him in his Kestrel right through it. And when people go, well, why were you 2 feet low? I'm going to say, I don't know, but I was. So I aimed 2 feet higher and hit. Like it's time later to worry about why you're 2 feet low and not when you're trying to shoot the target.
Have you ever met Jim Cowber?
No.
Jim was a SEAL. He runs a place out by me called The Sight, long range guy.
Okay.
Very good at it, teaches a lot of people. And I've heard him say, put that damn thing down and shoot your gun. You know, guys walking around, working them and spinning them and playing with them. And he's got to be mid to late 60s now. And yeah, put that damn thing down. Get behind your
great.
gun.
It's a great tool. But so in my newest book, in the advanced long range shooting book, when I started the ballistic software chapter, I was a little defensive. I said, look, I've gotten a bad rap for years. I've gotten a bad rap of being anti-ballistic software, and it's just not true. I think ballistic software is amazing. But I put a little subchapter in there that says, knowing when it's your turn, like your turn or time to use ballistic software. If you can't even do X, Y, and Z yet, keep that away. Right? If you're unable to even just estimate what the wind's going to be, it's kind of like learning how to use a map and compass before relying on the GPS. GPS is not a bad tool. But if you're trying to teach someone how to navigate in the woods, having them buried in the GPS defeats the purpose.
And it's a pretty easy thing to have get broken.
Yeah.
Batteries die, etc. We work like in our rifle course, which is not a long range course, but we explain some of this stuff. I want to see guys shoot good groups at freaking 30 yards, 50 yards before we even waste the energy. Because if you're like, you can't hit this at 50 yards, why are we laying in the dirt trying to hit stuff 500 or 600 yards away, like, or if we just got some super randomness like you're talking about. And then of course, during that exercise, normally a scope falls off or a sling mount falls off or a bipod comes loose or, all those things too, when a gun's just not shot enough to warm up. That's interesting.
I like shooting closer too. Pulling the trigger, I pull the trigger the exact same at 100 yards as I do at a mile. The bullet doesn't know if it's traveling 100 yards or it's traveling a mile, right? Everything I do is exactly the same, which is why in the military, the spotter is the senior man. The spotting is the hard part. Once you learn how to shoot the same every time, I argue you don't need to know how far we're shooting. If you were on the gun, I would say, here's the elevation, here's the windage, shoot. Yeah. Well, how far is the target? It doesn't matter, shoot it. Well, what's the wind value? It doesn't matter, shoot it. That's my job.
Right, dial this in on the scope. I got a funny story about being with Jim years ago, the guy I mentioned. We spent a couple days together, he and I and my friend sang, and I'm like, man, I'm really good at this. Like, I'm hitting movers. We're having beers that night back at the cabin, and I'm like, just in my head, I'm listening to these guys, and I'm like, I don't even know why I'm here. Like, I am really fucking good at this shit. And then the next day we got to call our own dope, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you tell me what to dial on these things again? Is exactly what you said. I was just like, okay, I'm pretty good at pulling the trigger, but I actually don't know what any of these knobs do. Now I have to pay attention.
Yeah, I've taught plenty of courses that I call Hear Honey courses, where it's like a bunch of VIPs want to feel good about shooting or they want to see a new rifle. Everything's dialed in, everything's ready. They just lay down behind it and shoot the target and they jump up and feel like a hero. Here, honey, here's the rifle, shoot it. Yeah, you did so great. Yeah, but they don't really know what they've learned. And so long range shooting shouldn't be called long range shooting. I kind of wish we just called it precision rifle because at least half of it, is just the fundamentals of shooting a gun.
Sure.
Regardless of the distance. Then the other part of it is figuring out what the wind is doing and stuff like that. But who cares what the wind is doing if you can't shoot a minute of angle? Arguing over the angle of the wind and the spin of the earth and all that is not going to matter.
That's always a fun thing to watch in classes. You hear guys in the back during lunch or something arguing over which optic is the best or which newest hot projectile, which most of them is a remake of something already made 50 years ago or whatever. And then we get to the shooting and it's like, man, your $6,000 gun is you're shooting 9-inch groups at 50 yards, my dude. Let's stop all the discussion back there and let me take your juice box away to stabilize your blood sugar and let's frickin', let's actually have a discussion here about marksmanship. I one time brought up something you had told me with a group of guys that are all like deep in the long range field, and one of them owns a brass company, and I said, I know this guy, and he said cold bore is a myth.
That probably pissed them off.
Well, and I couldn't argue it the same way you did. I kind of like just walked in the room, threw the grenade in, and walked out, So,
Well, yeah, I'll talk about it now if you want to.
yes, please.
In this newest book, I have one also where I say BC is outdated. BC's dead. And that's really making people upset.
And for the people that are not into this, please explain ballistic coefficient for them.
BC, yeah, or ballistic coefficient, is a relative measure of a bullet's efficiency or its ability to fly through the air. And we need to know that because a more aerodynamic projectile with, higher mass but smaller surface area will fly through the air better than something that's lighter and bigger, ping pong ball versus a billiard ball kind of thing. So BC is what everyone just swears by when it comes to bullets efficiency. And that's what you need to input into your software. And that's what you need to know everything. Well, I'm going to shoot this bullet because of this BC and it's better. And everything revolves around that. And I feel a little like Martin Luther hammering to the door right now.
The 95 thesis.
Yeah, saying BC's dead. And BC's dead because you can't trust it. Manufacturers have a motivation to say the BC of their bullet is a little better than it is. I'm not saying they're lying, but they have motivation to. BC changes. Every bullet as it flies down range, the BC changes as it goes. The BC is tied to a certain velocity.
It's a picture at one point in time.
Yeah. So it's the BC that you're going to the thousandth of a decimal place and entering your ballistic software that it's calculating everything off of isn't even what the BC really is at any given time as it flies downrange. And you have no way to measure it yourself and confirm it.
Right. Unless you are a PhD mathematician, physicist, you're not doing the calculations because it's
the only
based
way
off...
you could. Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you.
The only way you could back into it by taking the actual trajectory and the velocity and then backwards calculating what the BC is. But if you already have the trajectory, then why do you need the BC? So newer software like the Hornady Fordoff, Applied Ballistics, they're using custom drag models where they're actually measuring bullets with Doppler radar. So it's not a theoretical of what a bullet with that BC should do. It's a measurement of what that bullet did do. And they're amazing. That's why those two pieces of software are the ones I use or recommend. I have no interest in them at all. But you take something like, for most people, Hornady Fordoff, just that's what you should be using. I think that's what I use. And it's because it's the simpler, easier to use one. And you go in there and you pick the bullet and they have these huge Doppler radars and they're shooting them and measuring the perfect trajectory. It's amazing. Anyway, you want to do cold bore or do you want to do BC still?
Well, I think why it's interesting, here's a question I get at least once a week. Hey man, I see that you're shooting this Glock in the video. I hate Glock, but I need to buy like a really good carry gun that's like super durable and not too expensive and pretty accurate, maybe even really accurate. But I hate Glock. And then I respond and I'm like, all right, so go get a Glock, man. Like that's all the boxes, right? It's super accurate. It's super reliable. Like you can have it the rest of your life and maybe swap two parts. I hate it. Why do you hate it? I don't, they're ugly or okay. If aesthetics mean something for a hammer or a sword, that's weird, but okay. So like there seems to be some very, here's an example. I had a really beautiful custom rifle built. It's in the case over here. I should have had it out for the video, but the guy that built it, his name's Rod Weber, excellent dude, and we chose I think we've got a Lilja barrel in there if memory serves. Doesn't matter, but there's 5'10" badass barrel makers, and everybody swears by one. And it's like, well, if I go to a match, a PRS match or a Camp Perry match, I don't walk the line and only see one barrel. Like, so some of the gear stuff, just talk about like what really matters.
Yeah. Well,
That's a,
guys will
that's a,
argue about what scope is 8 ounces lighter, but they've done nothing to take the extra 10 pounds off their waist, around their
hmm.
own bellies. They're like, oh, if they're hunting, I need the scope. It's 8 ounces lighter. If you put down the juice boxes, you would be 10 pounds lighter. That's a lot better, isn't it? But yeah, so the gear is easy to chase, and that goes back to what I called that sniper fairy dust. They don't understand it, and so they want to. I'm gonna segue this right into that cold bore thing. When guys don't understand what's actually going on, and they don't want to take accountability for what they do or fail to do, it's easier to blame the equipment. So guys will do certain torque settings and certain balancing of the scopes and leveling this. They'll have a plumb bob at 100, and they'll have little bubble levels on the scope and the right. They'll do all this mystical stuff to get the scope zeroed properly. And I'll take a set of feeler gauges for spark plug gapping, put them under the scope because the bottom of the scope is flat. Till the scope is flat, tighten the screws down and go shoot. That's what I'll do. Okay, because it's good enough. But some of these guys want the sniper voodoo, that fairy dust on there. And one of those things is cold bore shots. And I'm going to talk about gear too. Maybe cold bore exists. I don't think it does. And even if it does, if we can't.
Can you go back 1 second and
Yeah.
tell the listener viewers what is this idea of cold bore, that not the idea you adhere to, but the mass accepted?
The concept. Yeah. The concept of cold bore is that the first shot out of a cold, clean barrel out of a rifle will have a different point of impact from the rest of the shots that you shoot out of the rifle. So when you first get to the range, you first get the rifle out and you shoot and you miss, it's because it was a cold bore and it wasn't a warmed up barrel yet. And somehow when the barrel warms up, it harmonically shifts and goes to where it needs to be. I think it's absolute BS. Okay, some guys swear by it, and I can't argue their experience, but here's why I think it's BS. One, for years of sniper students that I've taught, okay, month in, month out, course after course after course, military, police, civilian, long range shooters, once they got to a certain level of proficiency in the course, I usually did a 10-day course. About day 5, I would give them a target that had 5 1-inch diamonds at the top and 5 1-inch diamonds in a row at the bottom. And the 2 left diamonds vertically would be day 1. We would go staple them up. I would make sure their rifles were clean from the night before. Clean cold bores. They would shoot 1 round at the top target, and they'd shoot a 5-round group at the target below it. We would take the target down, and we'd do that every morning for 5 days in a row. And what we found is if we had the shooters warm up, if we had them dry practice, dry fire, if we had them actually call their shots, what we saw 99.9% of the times, maybe I'm over exaggerating it, but the vast majority of the time, so much that we just considered it a rule, is that bullet at the top, that supposed cold bore shot, could be superimposed perfectly to the group below it, year in, year out. Now, when they didn't warm up or didn't practice, they had the cold bore shot. So what's happening is they're missing. They had an extra big breakfast burrito. They chugged a big coffee. They got out to the range. It's a cold shooter, not a cold barrel. So not only did I see the empirical evidence that shows that there's no such thing, I'm also going to look at it theoretically. So if they're telling me that the temperature of the barrel is such that the first shot is going to be off, but once it warms up, it's okay. Well, I live in northern Arizona. If I was down in Phoenix, Arizona, and I get to the range and my rifle's sitting out there, it's not unreasonable that my barrel might be 80, 90 degrees. Might be warm to the touch. And that's my cold, quote unquote, cold barrel. I shoot it once. If I were to measure the temperature of the barrel, I don't think it would increase temperature that much. I think after I shot 20 rounds in quick succession, the barrel would be pretty warm. Would we agree? Yeah. I think the delta, the difference between shot 20 and shot 1 is a greater difference in temperature than shot 0 and shot 1. But somehow only the difference in temperature from shot 0 to shot 1 was enough to affect the harmonics of the barrel, and somehow shots 2 through 100 do nothing. That's another reason I call BS. The other one is fouling. We used to clean our barrels so religiously because you had to have it clean for accuracy. We've now found through all these PRS shooters, through the war, through stuff like that, that actually not cleaning it all the way down to the bare metal can actually help keep the accuracy in the barrel longer. Well, it wouldn't make sense to me that if perfectly clean to shot 1 was a huge difference, but shot one fouling to shot 500 fouling isn't a difference.
Mm-hmm.
None of it makes sense. And it's way more likely to me that it's a cold shooter. So what I see is I believe strongly in calling your shots. I believe strongly in dry practicing or dry firing. I call it dry practice because when I'm out on the line, I don't like saying the word fire. So
Mm-hmm.
I scream out dry
Sure.
practice. And I will have students dry practice every morning until they have 5 perfect shots of the calling their own shot. They're staring at the reticle, applying steady pressure to the trigger, click, center, reload, try it again, click, ooh, that was left. And they work until they get 5 perfect centers. Then they load and shoot. This cold bore problem goes away. But I think people have to believe in this because they don't want to admit that maybe they just screwed up the first shot of the day, which is probably the most likely thing.
I have heard guys that are good shooters, engineering backgrounds, etc., argue it. Um, I guess it's not worth it. The truth is, if you go out and can validate it for yourself, why not?
And vice versa. If they swear by it, and I've had guys say, oh no, it's always 2 minutes low and 1 minute right for me, cold bore. My answer to them is great. Then it exists and you should roll with that. Do
I'd
whatever
also
works for
never
you.
hunt with that rifle then.
Right. So like
Yeah, never hunt with that.
you see my point, right? If like
Hmm.
how is shot 0 to shot 1 making the difference? But yeah. So in the military, we were taught to shoot a couple rounds into the dirt before we went out on the mission, and we would. We'd
So you just
literally go outside the gate, bang, bang, shoot a couple rounds to foul our barrels. And no one ever stopped and thought about like what I said. Wait, what happens after shot 100? It's really dirty after shot 100. But somehow the fouling of one bullet solved the problem. It's just weird to me.
It's interesting with all that we know. For
Mm,
example, Doppler radar tracking bullets in flight and creating these beautiful algorithms that we can figure out where this thing's going to hit at any point in space. Yet something like this is still mystical. And I was just in the middle of some of my EMS continuing education, and there's this piece. I don't need to go into it, but it has to do with resuscitation of a person that's not breathing. And in 1960 something, a doctor's like, hey, if we do this one thing, it helps alleviate a person vomiting during CPR. So for like 30 years, we did that. And
mm,
then just recently, we decided that's very bad. And now we're not doing it again. But
yeah.
like for 30 years, somebody just decided to do it because some guy said it and nobody ever looked at it. And then some people at probably a teaching hospital were like, we should see if this actually is the good thing to do. Why
Yeah.
don't we figure this shit out?
Well, I think I have, but maybe I haven't. I don't think it matters. If you, I'm going to overstate this, and you'll probably disagree with this, and I support you disagreeing with this.
Okay.
If you shoot the rifle and jerk the trigger so bad that you jerk the trigger 10 mils to the right, but you do it exactly the same every single time, great. I'll mount your scope crooked. You'll be the best shooter in the world. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
it's funny. It's funny you say that because I know plenty of people that adjust a sight on a pistol because they shoot low left, right? So
Oh,
they
yeah.
adj- which, it's perfect if we're only shooting 7 or 10 or 15 yards or whatever this movement is going to put you back on target. It's great till you're at 12 and a half feet or 40
Yeah.
yards. Now we got to go get the hammer out and tap that thing around some more. That's
Yeah. What
funny.
matters is a good stable position, good trigger control, good application of the fundamentals. That's what matters. Well, I'd have military police guys arguing about the twist of their barrels, and I'd go over there and be like, guys, shoot the target. Shut up. Like, well, this rifle's a 1 in 10 twist to be better if it's a 1 in 8 twist. I go, okay. Did you bring your barrel twister? Do you have a device that you can clamp on the barrel and somehow twist it and get a different twist rate? No? Then shoot the gun you got. There's the target. Here's your rifle. Let's shoot. Well, yeah, but the 1 in 8. I wish for students, I mean, for the first while they're learning, I wish I could Dremel off the twist rate on the barrel. Heck, don't even tell them the BC of the bullet. Don't even tell them what caliber they're shooting. None of it matters. This is something that it came out in the first book that it was kind of controversial at the time, but I've heard it said back now, which I love, is turn to triangle. That's a phrase I used to say, is I don't care if your turret had shapes on it, had a circle and then a square and then a triangle. If you turn to triangle and you hit it 500 yards, the next time you need to shoot 500 yards, turn to triangle. Stop stressing about, well, this BC did this and this. I don't care what theoretically happened. I care what did happen. Time to shoot the target. I shoot
Mm.
tactical long range, not precision groups like Olympic style shooting. That bad guy needs to be shot right now. Why don't we shoot him? And let's talk later about why you were 2 feet low. You know what you do now? Aim 2 feet higher and shoot him. And now let's have a conversation. Another thing guys do on rifles all the time that drives me nuts with bolt action rifles, snipers love to sit on empty guns. I am constantly on the range screaming, load your rifles. I'm like, well, why? We shot our 5-round group. The drill will be, okay, shoot 5 rounds this distance, go ahead and go. And then the rounds go, and I look around and everyone's sitting there with an empty gun. And I have to go out there and go, guys, if I were shooting a pistol course with you right now, who among you would shoot to slide lock,
Right.
holster the pistol to slide lock, and stare at the target? And like, well, what would you do? Reload the gun. Yeah, you're in a gunfight. Why don't you reload the gun? You need practice. I mean, a bolt action gun, but bad guys sometimes need shot again. Bad guys have friends.
It still needs to be fed.
Yeah.
So this first book, the Long Range Shooter's Handbook, is a beginner's guide to precision shooting. In this book, you basically say that in the follow-up book, like, this is not for people if you don't understand some of these concepts. Talk about that a little bit on the follow-up book.
I try to keep my sense of humor in the second one, the black one that came out. Chapter 2 is titled, "This Book is Not for You." And I meant that to be shocking to some people. And I start it by saying, honestly, this book may not be for you, at least not yet. And I talk about how you need the fundamentals first. And I give a basic test in the second book that makes sure you understand what the fundamentals are. One, because I'd love to sell you 2 books, sure. But also, I don't want to repeat myself because you don't want to buy the same information twice. So if I already explained what minutes and mils are and how to convert between minutes of angle and mil radians and how to use them at long range and all that in the first orange book, I've already spent the pages doing that. I don't want to spend the pages doing it again in the second book because that's repeating myself. But I also don't like teaching something without saying what it is. I have 4 chapters on wind in this advanced book. One of them is on quick wind, which is a really cool modern way to shoot and get wind calls very quickly, and it's based off mil radians. I can't start the chapter saying, well, what you do is you figure out how many miles per hour the wind is to where your gun shoots 1/10 of a mil per this without introducing what a mil is. And so instead of repeating it again, I put that test in there. And even chapter 3 I title in the advanced long range shooting book, chapter 3 is titled, "This Book is Not Advanced." And I explained that, yeah, it's advanced topics, but I'm still trying to do it simply. My goal at the end of the advanced book is for you to finish it and say, that wasn't that advanced. If you do, I think I succeeded as a teacher. I explained concepts. There's, like I said, 4 chapters on wind. There's chapters on moving targets. There's talking about aerodynamic jump, gravity ballistics, ballistic software, all sorts of stuff in here that are really advanced topics. And if you're able to read those and finish it and not think it was over your head, good. Then leave me a good review because I think that was the goal.
I like it. How's it selling?
It's selling great. I wish I wrote it years ago. It took me almost 10 years, 9 years and change to get it out after the first book. And the real reason why is I was afraid to write it.
Why?
Well, the first book I've rattled off 1,000 times. Every chapter in there, I could just stand up and give a spontaneous course on wind reading or position shooting because I've said it over and over and over. And I know how to explain. I know the analogies that work. And I can fairly confidently say, for the basics and the fundamentals, I'm the subject matter expert, or I'm at least one of them. But I am a subject matter expert in this stuff in the Long Range Shooting Handbook, the orange one. The advanced stuff, I'm not the expert in that. I'm not the advanced guy. I'm talking about aerodynamic jump in here. Aerodynamic jump is how a side-to-side wind, so a left to right or right to left wind, will actually affect your bullet's elevation on the target because of how the bullet spins when it interacts with the wind. These are concepts that you should not be worrying about until you're a really good shooter, okay? I have to Google it and go, wait, which way is it again? Wait, how much is it? I go through load development tests in here. I cover hand loading or reloading in here. And there's some load development tests that guys go through. There's the ladder test or the OCW, optimum charge weight test, and ways to calculate the exact right recipe for the bullet and where it leaves the barrel at the right harmonic node and all this kind of stuff. I'm not the expert in that. So I have to research that myself to explain it simply. And
Hmm.
I slay some golden calves in this advanced book. I talk about all three of the main load development tests. So the first, subsection is here's this test and how it works and how you do it. Here's the next one. Here's the next one. And then that'll subchapter 4 after I introduce them is here's why you shouldn't use any of these. None of them work. And that does not make people happy. I'm essentially throwing the no such thing as a cold bore shot grenade into the room again. And I'm backing
Why
up
do
statistics.
why do none of them work? Why would they exist if they don't work?
A better way to say it is they all work, but they give you the false confidence that they're the only way to work, would be a
I
better way to
see.
say it. Okay. So people don't want to believe this. You're going to get some comments disagreeing with me. That's fine on this one. There is no magic recipe for a load for a particular rifle, despite what everyone thinks there is.
Just so I'm clear, I think what you're saying is I've got this Model 700 that was my grandpa's and it's awesome, but it hates this certain ammo, but it loves this one and it shoots this one really good. Then this one, if I put in your gun, this ammo that works good in my gun might not work good in your gun, kind of a thing.
I actually think there's some truth to that. I actually believe
Okay.
that, especially with older adult bullet designs. We won't have to get into it now, but tangent versus secant ogive bullets and freeboard jump and all that.
Oh my
Charge weight
gosh.
is normally once you picked your bullet, you picked your cartridge, and now you're trying to fine tune the exact amount of powder. That's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
So what they'll do is they'll take a bullet, take a brass, take a primer, take a powder brand, and they'll say, okay, I need to figure out exactly the right recipe to tailor this load. So I'll put in
Okay.
38.1 grains of powder in one bullet. Next bullet, I'll put 38.3, and I'll go up like 0.2 grains. And they'll go to the range of these 20 bullets. And then each of these tests prescribe a different way of shooting on the target and measuring how to figure it out. And they all based on these things like called accuracy nodes, which I don't believe in. But so for example, if you can see here, I have one called the ladder test, and this is one where I put the grain weights next to the bullet, the impacts like you would expect to have with powder. And the theory here is you shoot, and as you shoot each bullet with more and more powder, it's going to impact higher on the target because it's moving faster, so it had less time to fall. Faster bullets don't resist gravity; they just aren't exposed to gravity for as long.
Hmm.
So they're going to work their way up the target. And then the ladder test says you're going to look for three that are clustered together. And those three that are clustered together, that's your accuracy node. And that's what you want for that gun. Okay. My problem with this is you do this and you take that load, it will work. So you will swear by this test is right. And I'm not saying that the men that developed this test, I'm not saying that all the people that rely and swear by this test are wrong. They are right. You will get a great load by doing that. I'm saying though, if you picked this one down here at the bottom, you'd also get a great load. And so this puts you into the false sense of finding something great when really it's not that. And the reason is statistical significance. If this person was a minute of angle shooter, if I were to draw a minute of angle group out of each one of these, this bullet that looks like it's part of a cluster might be the top of what the group was. This one might be the bottom of the group, and the center of the group might be somewhere else, right? I go through and I give examples with diagrams of statistical significance of where the groups might be versus individual impacts. So Hornady, who tests way more than I do on their podcast, they're the first ones that put me onto this concept. And then I found an article by Tyler Friel of Outdoor Life, and I quote him in here. And he wondered the same thing I'm wondering, if these really work. So he went out and actually tested them in big groups to see what would really happen and which test was the best. Was it the optimal charge weight test? Was it the ladder test? Was it the whatever? And when he tested 3 different rifles with 3 different cartridges through all 3 different tests, what he found was each test gave a different result. So he would have
Hmm.
certain charge weights, and the velocity node test would say this grain was the best. The OCW said this one was the best. But the best group on paper was actually something entirely different. So all loads with these small incremental changes between powder, if you're keeping the bullet the same, are going to work as good as that bullet can do. And you're actually going to get better accuracy the lower velocity you go. You're going to have less abuse on everything. You're going to get better group sizes out of things. So people, that's another example, will put all this stock into this and they'll spend all this time and all this energy and going to the range and doing all these circling and measuring and stuff. And what is really the truth is if they just picked one and loaded them consistently, it'd
Hmm.
be great. Morgan King, he won the Golden Bullet. So he won the whole PRS circuit last year. So the whole year of everything together, he's the overall winner. Okay. Safe to say the dude can shoot. Okay. He shot factory ammo the whole time. That's pretty
That's
amazing.
telling. Yeah.
Yeah. So
now in that, factory ammo has changed light years in the last 50, 60 years, which is important. It's not like we've got equipment, machines, laser beams, all kinds of stuff that's measuring stuff with loading that back in the day did not exist.
True. Same with rifle manufacturing. Same with optic manufacturing. Yeah, we've all come a long way.
But I think your point is he's competing against guys that are in their basement with magnifying glasses on and super expensive equipment, chasing the minutia.
And it's not just that they're doing that. You're right. It's they're chasing the minutia because they swear that it works. And I think it's a baseball player wearing certain socks for luck. They believe it, so it works for them. So the ladder test will work. You will find a good load. But I'm saying, instead of spending all of your time thinking that there's all this mystical, magical stuff going on, and you have to do all these special things. No, it just comes down to consistency. Consistency is the key to accuracy. Have consistent ammunition, shoot in a consistent manner, and the bullets are going to impact in the same spot every time. That's what matters.
Just to make sure nobody listening or watching misunderstands, you're not saying go buy factory ammo and you'll win PRS. He's probably shooting a very high grade of factory ammo. Yes. And he's also a very good shooter. Like you go to Walmart and buy some stuff that's in the box off the bottom of the shelf there.
Correct.
It's not going to shoot these sub-minute groups that these guys are expecting.
You will get better
guns.
Groups hand loading. You'll get better than what he was shooting. I'm just saying it's not necessary. So you will get the best groups possible by tailoring your own ammunition. You will. I don't think you shouldn't not do it. I'm just saying it's more important to load consistently than it is to load a super magic accuracy node, barrel vibration, something happening or not. No. Shoot. The other thing is they talk about the theory is that the barrel's vibrating and whipping, and somehow that those bullets are leaving at the top of that whip, and that's why they're hitting in the same spot and they're spreading out for the rest. Well, my problem with that is those 0.2 grain differences are 20 feet a second difference of velocity. Okay. When you change from summer to winter, you have more feet per second velocity just from the ambient air temperature than you do from that. So if the 20 feet per second was that crucial to this barrel whip, what happens when it's 10 degrees warmer outside? Do you have to retailer your load for a different barrel whip? No, just shoot it.
I like that. I remember watching a video from Reed Heinrichs, I think is how you say his name, Valor Ridge. He's a Marine that runs a training program. He had a dude come. A friend of mine, retired Illinois state policeman that was one of the long-range guys for the SWAT team for the state police, helped run this course. It's got some valleys and stuff down there in southern Illinois, Kentucky, where Reed's place is. And it's a precision course. I think they stretch out like 600-700 yards, shooting some angles and such. And most of the guys are showing up with pretty fancy equipment. A kid came with a Mosin Nagant that he had a spam cam of ammo for. He did not have a lot of money, but he wanted to do this, so he purchased this surplus rifle and then like literally scuffed up the receiver and JB welded rings to it and put like an Amazon $100 scope on it. And JJ said the kid did really well, passed all of the standards of the course with a freaking 110-year-old bolt action rifle with spam cam ammo. Yeah. I loved hearing that story.
Do a drill called the LAPD drill. We called it the LAPD drill because we kind of named it after the North Hollywood shootout where the bank robbers were all in armor except for their faces.
Okay.
And none of the police officers were able to hit them in the face. So what we did is we take a 6-inch steel target, maybe 8-inch. If you're trying to replicate my head, maybe 12-inch. I got a big head. Target at 100 yards.
You do have a big head.
You don't put artwork on a postage stamp, Mickey. You need a big canvas for this
That did
beautiful
laugh a
mug.
little too hard at that one.
So it was actually helpful in the military because all I had to do was have a ghillie hat on. My rest of my body hid behind my head. It was nice. Um, so we would have these sniper students have 6 rounds in 60 seconds, shoot 2 rounds standing, 2 rounds kneeling, and 2 rounds off their elbows. No bipod legs. You could use a sling, no bipod legs. And somewhere within those 6 rounds, you had to perform a reload. We didn't care where, but you had to do a reload. And you had 60 seconds to do it. And we scored out of 6 hits. And these professional snipers with obnoxious taxpayer funded rigs and rifles and the best of everything, when I would usually do this at the beginning of a course because there's a certain amount of a course as an instructor. There's a couple tricks that I would do as an instructor. I think other instructors do as well, which sometimes you do a drill just to knock their ego down a little bit to show them a technique and then they get better as they go. And sometimes if they have their ego up about day 1 or day 2, I'm like, all right, we're going to do the LAPD drill this morning. Everybody line up. I'll go behind with a stopwatch. We're all going to go down one by one down the line. That's the steel target at 100 yards. Ready, set, go. And these guys with amazing pedigrees, with amazing equipment, would get 2 or 3 out of 6. I'd wait till the end. Then I'd walk over to my car and I'd get out a Romanian Wasser 10, like a
Nice.
cheap AK with wolf ammo with the green nylon sling. I'm like, all right, my turn. Because I think an instructor should demonstrate everything, should be able to do it. Okay. And if a student does better than me, I'm going to high five them and congratulate them. That's great. But I should at least be able to demonstrate to the standard. I'd give them the stopwatch and I'd usually get 6 out of 6. Occasionally I'd get 5 out of 6, but I'd usually get 6 out of 6. And I'd turn around and I'd hold up the rifle and say, iron sights, Wasser 10, crap wolf ammo. Why did I do better than you guys with all this amazing expensive gear? And then we talk about why it's the fundamentals and this and that. By the end of the course, they could all get 6 for 6 in the LAPD drill. So it's the same kind of thing. It's the fundamentals. To answer your question a while ago about what gear, the gear needs to be good enough to perform as designed every time. It doesn't need to be the lightest weight. It doesn't need to be the most accurate. If your rifle and ammunition combination shoot a minute of angle group at 100 yards, done. Stop. Don't touch anything. Shoot. Most guys that are into serious precision rifle will roll their eyes at me when I say that. Minute of angle. That's crap shooting. I want a quarter minute of angle. And a minute of angle, for everyone listening, is about an inch at 100 yards. So shooting about an inch at 100 yards is awesome. I would never expect better than that. And when people roll their eyes and say, well, I want a quarter-inch group, or I want one ragged hole, or this and that, I then bring up an idea of a paper plate. I'm like, paper plate's about 10 inches, would you say, Mickey?
Sure.
Okay. If I took this paper plate and I put it at 1,000 yards, how many of you could hit it 10 for 10? None of you could. That's a minute of angle. 1 inch at 100 is 10 inches at 1,000. So you're telling me a minute of angle isn't good enough? I'm telling you there's not a single one of you here that could do that if your life depended on it. There's not a single one of you here who could run around with body armor on, do jumping jacks, and lean off the bumper of a car and hit a 5-inch circle at 500 yards every single time, which is a minute of angle. So yes, a minute of angle is plenty good enough. So if your rifle, ammunition, and scope can reliably and consistently shoot a minute of angle, you're done. That's all the equipment you need. If the rifle is breaking or malfunctioning, or the scope isn't tracking or adjusting properly, now it's time to get a better scope. But don't spend your money on the fanciest rifle. I mean, you go get it. Like, I love Tikas. Go get a Tika bolt action rifle.
Sure.
And I bet none of you will ever be able to outshoot it. There's plenty of you that are better shooters than me, but I'm a good enough shooter and I can't outshoot it. And that's what I use. That's a great rifle. Go get one, be done with it. Maybe upgrade the stock because the stocks that come with them are kind of junky. Get a nicer stock. Or get a Bergara or get any of these rifles. You're now done. You don't have to get a custom rifle like you have. Custom rifles are really nice. But I need to get to work. I need the Toyota Corolla. I don't need the Lamborghini. Lamborghinis are fun. But if you want to get into this, get a Toyota Corolla. Make sure it works every time. And if you're going to spend money on something, spend a little bit more money on your scope and spend a lot more money on your training and ammo.
Mm-hmm.
Learning how to get good. Get a nicer scope than your rifle because it's really easy to upgrade rifles. I can sell a used rifle easily. It's hard to sell a used scope. So get the nice scope. And if you need to, upgrade the rifle underneath it. And now you still are familiar with your scope and your adjustments and how it works.
Not to mention, you won't want to sell that nice scope. It's a
Yeah.
yeah. That's that's something that I just was with a group of guys. I won't say where because I don't want to insult any of them. But you see these fancy guns, and then you see, I go, where the hell did you get this thing? Like this, $87 red dot on your $2,700 rifle. And like I can literally take the mount and bend it with my bare hands. Like, come on, man, come on. That's
Yeah.
nuts. That's
Yeah.
nuts. But like you said, I'm not a gear chaser. This beautiful rifle that I have was a creation from Defiance Action,
Mm-hmm.
Macmillan, and a couple companies that created it for us to allow students to get behind an awesome gun. So when we're doing stuff, I totally agree with you that the gear doesn't make the shooter, but I'll have guys after a couple days of shooting whatever they brought to the class get behind this, and we'll have it all dialed in at like 500 yards, 600 yards on like a head plate. And I'll give them 2 rounds of good ammo. We have Eagle Eye will supply me a box of ammo so everybody can
Uh-huh.
get a couple cracks on it. And they're like, oh, holy shit, like it's really nice, like with a
Yeah.
big badass top of the line scope on top of it so they can see what good glass looks like and have it's not
Mm-hmm.
that it's not buy this, it's the best thing ever. You got to mimic it, but here's the difference between your floppy bipod and a good bipod. Here's a difference between a
Yeah.
adjustable cheek weld and one that's just got some your sharp edges on your AR stock, whatever it might
Yeah.
be.
Same as like here's what a really nice guitar or a
Mm-hmm.
orchestra quality violin sounds like or feels like.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it amazing? It is amazing. I don't know how to play the violin.
Mm-hmm.
So a good violinist is gonna be able to get the cheapest one and sound better than me on the nicest one. Doesn't
100%.
mean they're not nice. I have custom rifles on Defiance Actions. I don't really ever make them, but I have my own line of custom rifles that are really fun. They're sexy to shoot. And when I do some demonstration videos or I put together instructional videos, sometimes I'll break out a Cleckner rifle because it's cool and it's fun
Mm-hmm.
and it's nice and I really appreciate it. But to think that's what I mean by that sniper fairy dust, though. To think that that combination of special everything is what makes you a good shooter, it's not. It's back to that Wasser 10 with iron sights at 100 yards. I'm allowing for acceptable accuracy. I'm focusing on the front sight. I'm applying proper trigger control, and I'm hitting the target.
Magic.
Yep.
Magic. That's pretty. I like that story. That drill. So 6 to 8 inch target, 100 yards, 6 hits, 2 standing, 2 kneeling, 2 off elbows, a reload in between. What's the
Hmm.
time standard?
60 seconds.
1 minute?
Yep.
Is that what you said? Okay.
Yeah. And then when you get good at it, it's 30. You do it in 30 seconds. But it's plenty of time. I'll send it to you when we're done here. I've on my
I wrote the
Instagram.
whole thing.
Well, I'll send you a video. I have an Instagram of me demonstrating in front of students, and I'll
Okay.
change it sometimes. So these students, I said, all right, this is a hunting course. It was like hunting class for people. So I let them shoot the 2 standing ones off the pole for the Ramada as if they're leaning off a tree. And then I let them lean off the edge of a table and then seated. So I modified it, but it was still 6 shots than the time standard. And
I
it's
dig
about,
it.
that's another life lesson from shooting. The reason people miss on that drill is they try to be too accurate. And I know
Hmm.
that sounds weird from a quote unquote sniper instructor to say, but they do this thing which I know you all do in your heads. So I'm going to prove that I can read your all's minds. You're aiming at the target and you're going a little bit left, a little bit left, oh, a little higher, wait, lower, right about now. That's what we all do in our
Hmm.
heads. We're trying to be super precise. And that now and jerking the trigger is what makes a miss.
Hmm.
Where instead, if you have what I call acceptable accuracy, you define the target. In this drill, the target is an 8-inch circle. Anywhere within the 8 inches is a hit. I didn't say you had to hit the center. Hitting the edge counts. So as long as the reticle is moving within the 8 inches, apply proper trigger control, let the gun go off. And when it goes off with good trigger control at the edge and it goes ding, that's a hit versus trying to be so precise that you end up missing. And that's the trick to that one.
I like that. Let's change gears a little bit.
All right.
You own a couple businesses, many businesses, one of them Gun University, but you also have the Rocket FFL and another one pertaining to FFLs. you've recently started posting some videos about myths relating to being FFL, such as, well, I'm an FFL and I don't like it because, and I've heard this many times, the ATF can come to my house Christmas Eve, rouse my family out of bed, and start dumping boxes over in my home office.
Yeah, that one
Why can they
bothers me.
do that?
Well, because the ATF overreaches. So the ATF has done that to people, but not legally and not because they had FFLs. Matter of fact, if you remember the Little Rock Airport, the man they shot in
Sure.
the middle of the night, he didn't have an FFL at all. So people are saying, well, I don't want an FFL because of this. I'm like, well, the reason the ATF went after that guy is he didn't have one. They said if he did have one, they're going to leave him alone. But I digress. I allow myself to get frustrated in the comments, and I know I shouldn't. So I'll post a video, and then people will comment, yeah, they can. ATF can come and inspect your records and guns anytime they want. And I'll try and be nice and respond, oh, actually, no, that's not true. This is what the law is, and this is what the standard is. And they'll come back, no, they can. And then after the fifth, no, they can, I start to get frustrated. And that's like a fault and a weakness of mine that I allow myself to get bothered by some of these commenters. So I need to stop reading them. Here's the truth. If you
Or
have
how
an
about instead
FFL,
of stop reading them, don't allow yourself to get bothered because somebody has a differing opinion.
you're exactly right. Wait a
Yeah.
minute. I don't agree with that opinion. I'm gonna let myself get bothered by it.
Hmm.
It's in the face of like, oh, here's the law, here's the nice thing, and they just go, no, it's not, and you repeat it over and over again. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna stop. So here's the fact of the matter: if you have an FFL from your home, and yes, you can have an FFL from your home. Most FFLs in the country currently are home-based FFLs. So not only is it allowed, it's the most common way FFLs are held.
And
The
real
ATF,
quick, because not everybody watching is a gun guy, just
Mhm.
the 10-second on what an FFL is.
It's a federal firearms license. It's what allows you to be engaged in the business of firearms. So your local gun shop or gun dealer is an FFL. A firearms manufacturer is an FFL. And so having this license allows you to get guns cheaper because you can get them at dealer prices from the distributors. It allows you to make some side money with guns because now you can be selling them to your friends or even just doing transfers for your friends. And it allows you to have access to firearms you wouldn't, otherwise normally be able to possess because you're an FFL. You can even make guns like I do. So you can have them at home. And here's the reality when the ATF can inspect. The ATF can inspect no more than once every 12 months. So they're limited to doing it once a year. On average, in reality, it's about once every 7 years is when people get inspected. And they can only come during your chosen business hours. So if you decided you're only open on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., then they can only come inspect you on Tuesday and Thursday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. No more than once a year. That's a far cry from any time they want, from 3 in the morning, stuff like that. Now, the inspection is only investigators. It's not law enforcement. ATF has two halves. One half is law enforcement agents, and the other half is inspectors or investigators. Like not investigators for a detective. They're auditors. They're like pencils and paper people coming to check your records. The agents aren't allowed in. I've on more than one occasion had a client hand the phone to the ATF that showed up because they brought agents to the inspection, and I had them pass the phone to the agents where I got to tell them to get lost because they're not allowed to come in as part of an inspection. They need a warrant just like any other law enforcement agent does.
That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Have they said to you every time, just like, okay, because they knew that they were in the wrong?
Oh yeah, they push back until I push back hard enough, then they do it. Yeah,
What do you say?
get lost. I say, what state is this? All right, I'm calling your boss because I know who their boss is, or I know I work with the leadership, or I know who they are. Like, hold that thought. So you're telling me I'm instructing you to leave and telling you to come back with a warrant, and you're refusing? Is this really the fight you want to have today? No, 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 no. Never mind, never mind. And then they leave.
I think that's probably the part people aren't thinking about. If somebody is an FFL, commits some crime, and there is a warrant, that's a completely different animal. Then they might show up in the middle of the night and drag you out of bed and flashbangs through the front window and all that jazz. But that's somebody that's got a warrant that they're serving
Yeah,
on the property. That could
that has
be
nothing to do with
anybody.
an FFL or not.
Hmm.
Here's what I like to equate it to. I don't want to get my driver's license because I don't want the police to come to my house and search my car anytime they want. They can't. Getting a driver's license doesn't mean that they now have the ability to search your trunk anytime they want. They can't come at 3 a.m, knock on your door, wake you up, walk you out to your trunk, say, open your trunk and search it. They can't do that. Even
Hmm.
at a traffic stop, without probable cause or a reasonable suspicion of a reason to do that, your Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable searches and seizures don't get thrown in the trash can just because you got a driver's license, nor do they get thrown in the trash can just because you get yourself an FFL. It's just a different type of license. You still would say, get a warrant. No, I'm not giving you authority to search my trunk.
Why do you think these myths are so prevalent?
Because gun shops understandably don't want a bunch of home-based FFLs. I'm sorry to all the gun
Oh.
shop owners out there.
Do you think, as an attorney, a patriot, a citizen, that we should have this licensing scheme through the ATF?
I think every gun law is an infringement.
Do you?
Mm-hmm. However,
I just
there's
go
still
ahead.
people, the hypocrisy in me is there's still plenty of people that if I get to choose, I would like to point at some people that I don't want to have guns. So
Sure.
that's where I stand.
This recent craziness in Virginia, the state senator, that's you've seen these videos, I'm sure. He says you can't have a machine gun, you can't have a rocket launcher, you can't have a flamethrower, you can't have a tank. I did a little video on it and I went and
You can
found
have
a
all those.
yeah, yeah. I went and found people, some of them me in the video, shooting machine guns and flamethrowers, and like it's like uh, uh, that's an interesting thing. There's another one of those things that even he's a lawyer, he's a went to a
Mhm.
good law school, has years of practice, and he doesn't have the ability to go on Google in 3 minutes and figure out that all of these things are lawful, and instead just proliferates the same bullshit. Same kind of bullshit, I guess.
Or he chooses to.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. That's another kind of ignorance. Piece of
So when I've testified in front of Congress, I don't think I've ever been more nervous than testifying in front of Congress. I've been on the news a few times,
why it doesn't
gone
matter.
on
Nobody
Tucker.
can, they can't make anybody do anything.
Yeah, exactly right. It's just I don't know, just being honest about it. When I used to when Tucker had a show, Tucker Carlson, I used to go on that every once in a while, or I'd go on certain shows. And that was I'd get nervous before that because you got all these people going to be watching you, and you don't want to say the wrong word or you know
Mm-hmm.
burp on
Sure.
national television with millions of viewers, something like that. But something about going testifying in front of Congress. It's been 4 times now, and each time beforehand, I'm just. Okay, I don't know why I'm so nervous because all the eyes are on you. And I know that half the people up there, half the congressmen or half the senators, are on my side and the other half are not on my side. And the ones that aren't on my side, they're looking for their 10-second clip to
Sound
make me look
bite.
stupid
Mm-hmm.
that they're going to put in their next campaign video. And so they're not going to make me look stupid by logically trapping me. They're not going to make me look stupid by stumping me on something about the law regarding the firearms. They're going to make me look stupid by tripping me up or asking a question that's not really clearly answered, and then by trying to be a bully or something. So you don't want to be that patsy. No one wants to be the guy that's used, in that video clip. And then the other problem is the half the people that are on your side, they aren't necessarily understanding what's going on either. And so sometimes they
True.
try to throw you softball questions. They think they're helping, and my brain's running 100 miles an hour. I'm like, okay, you're trying to agree with me, but what you just said makes no sense, and I don't want to point that out completely, but I also want to agree with you. So how do I delicately? Yeah, it's nerve wracking. And the last time I did it was in front of the Senate, and I was testifying on bump stocks. No, not bump
Mm.
stocks, arm braces. And Senator Dick Durbin
My senator.
was up there and talking about how these shouldn't be allowed and how they increase the lethality of it. And they had other experts talking about that. And I said, they do not. How in the world is the lethality of a firearm increased because of a pistol brace? The velocity doesn't change. Nothing changes. No, it doesn't. If anything, it makes it less concealable. The whole reason we have
Mm.
laws on SBRs is because of concealability. It makes the gun bigger, so it's harder to conceal and easier to see. Well, what is the problem here? And so he started pressing me and trying to get me to admit that I think certain laws should be allowed or certain things should be banned. And I finally got to the point where I just gulped and said, well, here's my chance to say it. And I leaned forward and told him what I told you. I said, Senator, with all due respect, I think every single gun law is an infringement of the Second Amendment. That's the
Got
only
your
way to end
sound
it.
bite.
I got my
Mm-hmm.
soundbite. He didn't get his,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a situation like that. They're looking to ram you into a corner. Like, so how many babies do you prefer are murdered by firearms with bump stocks, Mr. Kleckner?
Yeah,
500 or 5,000? Which would you accept?
exactly.
That's
Or it's a trap
ridiculous.
question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it's a hey, does your mom know you're gay? You can't answer that, right?
That's funny.
No. Yeah, yes. Wait. Ah. Yeah. So and so the other nerve-wracking part is you're under oath. Like you stand up and you get sworn in. You know, what happens if you say something you don't realize it wasn't true? Or yeah, I love doing it, but it's still nerve-wracking.
When you were there, were you there on behalf of NSSF that the last time?
Yes, the last time I was, NSSF had me out there as their, well, it's you're on behalf of a senator. We'll invite you. So each person that testifies is the guest of a certain senator that's at part of the hearing.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, the senator will reach out to the NSSF and say, hey, who do you got to speak on this or to come talk about this? Sometimes, though, it's me. You know, when I was representing a client in Detroit that was getting steamrolled by the ATF, and the ATF was wrong. And I kept pointing out how they were wrong. We're going through this big legal fight, and the ATF wouldn't budge. I pulled a trump card and said, really? That's how we're going to do this? All right. I got myself in front of Congress and I brought the client behind me. And I spent my whole time testifying, getting the ATF in trouble. And you saw people running around passing papers in the background, and the problem actually got solved. It's sad that we have to do this kind of thing to keep the ATF from overstepping, but I think the ATF oversteps their authority. And if that's a reason that you don't want to get an FFL, yeah, okay, I understand that. But I'm trying to tell you, getting more licensing is usually better. Having the authority and permission from the government and getting all the paperwork in order is usually better than not. So that's the side I err on. It's kind of like saying whether I want to go to CCW or not. I get one.
Do you think that this will ever change with the ATF? Do you think that you've got plenty of people that would love to see the ATF go away. Do you think that we would ever do that?
I don't know. Maybe they might get rolled into the DOJ. I love fighting the ATF, so it's actually enjoyable for me because that's my legal career is to fight them. They serve a purpose though, and if we're going to agree that maybe the worst person we can imagine maybe shouldn't have access to firearms, I don't know if we agree on that, but if we could agree on that, then I'm going to ask who's going to enforce that. And calling for the abolishment of the ATF is fun, and I do it. And I like to. I posed next to someone who had like an ATF jacket and I said ATF is gay because I thought it was hilarious. Um, last time I was dealing with an inspector for me, I mentioned something about my puppy at the time was being friendly to him. And I was like, get away from him. You don't know who the ATF is? And the inspector was like, what are you talking about? I said, what do you mean? What am I talking about? So I'm sitting there showing him memes on my phone, picking on him about how the ATF shoots dogs. They still serve a purpose if we're going to have the laws. So if we're going to have laws, getting rid of the ATF without changing the laws does nothing, in my opinion.
Sure.
Just like saying abolish the police. You know, people that are calling for defunding the police or getting rid of the police. Well, who's going to enforce the laws? I'd rather change the laws. I'd rather get the ATF whipped into shape. They're way overstepping. They're doing so many things wrong with accountability and stuff like that. I would love to see the office cleaned up. I'd love to see actual people that respect our constitutional rights and only follow the law as it is. But if we want to change things, I think we need to change the law because you get rid of the ATF today. If I snap my fingers and the ATF is gone, all I ask is who's going to enforce the Gun Control Act because it's still on the law, it's still on the books.
Hmm.
It's going to be the DOJ. And as someone who represents gun shops and manufacturers, I would way rather have the ATF inspector show up, who's not law enforcement and who looks at most of these inspectors are good people. Good enough people. They work for the ATF, but they see the industry as a regulated industry and almost like a partnership, and they're coming to do an inspection and they're there to look for serial numbers and make sure the records are in order. I don't like it, but I would prefer that over an FBI agent who looks at everyone they deal with as suspects.
Hmm.
Right? I'd rather that than law enforcement coming in and doing it because until the law gets changed, someone's going to enforce those records and inspections because the law says this is what you have to do. Is that
Hmm.
too roundabout, or does that make sense?
No, that makes sense. I can dig all that. Do you think it's been any better with the second round of our current president?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Oh yeah, yeah. The zero tolerance policy that came out unofficially under the Biden administration was the worst I've had to deal with. That's where I had issues with the client, like that client in Detroit. My testimony is part of public record, so I can talk. I'm not betraying any client information here. I told the details of what happened there. It's a simple technical error that had no consequence at all. They were trying to shut the whole business down for.
It
And
wasn't something nefarious. He wasn't selling guns out the back door,
no.
falsifying documents or anything.
Now, if he was selling guns out the back door to the Mexican drug cartel, I could see why the ATF would be upset because that would be competition for the ATF. But no, it was literally ticky tacky paperwork error. It was what I called no harm, no foul. Person passed the background check. Everything was like, what are we doing here? Like, are you the volume they do and what I'm used to also. So what I like to help for clients is these pockets of regions for the ATF sometimes become islands on themselves, and they will try and revoke a license or get someone in trouble for this level of mistake. I like to be able to come in and say, well, that's interesting because the ATF's not allowed to apply the law differently depending on which state you live in because you're a federal agency. Look what I just had for a client in Texas last month. They had 3 of those happen and not revoked. So, okay, never mind, they back off. But that zero tolerance was horrible. It wasn't just because every inspection, I don't know if you have perfect inspections. It's very rare to have a perfect inspection.
Sure.
Something somewhere, some receipt is out of order. Now, as long as we haven't lost the 4473, that's that form you fill out when you buy a gun. As long as you haven't lost that, as long as they passed a background check, you didn't knowingly sell guns at the back door. Come on. The fact that they accidentally put county instead of country and you didn't catch it, that's not a reason to shut down an entire business and ruin everyone's livelihood. And that's what they're
Hmm.
doing under Biden. So now they backed completely off the zero tolerance policy, and it's better now. Should that be a reason to rejoice? Yeah, but if it could go away that easily, that means it could come back that easily too.
Hmm. Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, so I think it needs cleaned house massively. I think ATF needs seriously, better leadership, better people in there. I think they need to be constrained and restrained to only enforce the law that's actually there. But if we want to make changes, getting rid of an agency just for the next agency to take over enforcing the law is not a victory. Getting the laws changed, in my opinion, or holding the agency accountable is a victory.
I dig that. What is it that a lot of these FFLs that get jammed up are getting in trouble for? Um, I heard you say messing up some paperwork. So is it seem to be like the same kind of stuff, or could it be a
Mhm.
million different things?
It could be a lot of different things. However, the ATF publishes every year its inspection findings and how many FFLs they inspected and what laws were violated. 7 out of the top 10 violations every single year, this is year after year, 7 out of the top 10 are off of the Form 4473. That's that form you fill out when you get a gun. And the mistakes on there are usually ticky tacky minor errors, but they can be more serious. A serious one would be losing the 4473. Now, heaven forbid that gun gets used in a mass shooting, the ATF can't trace the gun back to the person and even prove that that person had the gun because that was the proof they would need in court to prosecute that they signed the paperwork. Or maybe the person checked that they were a violent felon and the gun dealer didn't see the check mark and gave them the gun anyway. That's a violation of the law. Or they didn't do the background check, violation of the law. Um, Things like that. Those are the more severe ones. The ones that aren't as big of a deal, but you'll still get in trouble for, is they forgot to put a middle initial.
Hmm.
They wrote county instead of country. They had a waiting period in your state, so they had to come back 3 days later to get the gun, and they forgot to re-sign again with the new date 3 days later. But everything else was in order. That's why I call it no harm, no foul issue. This was a good person who passed the background check, who did everything. You're just mad that there wasn't a stamp in this little box. Come on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's why I made FFL safe. That's the software that I made for FFLs to use to keep all their records compliant. And one of the things in there is a electronic 4473. So you get rid of the paper. The FFL starts it on their end on the computer, and then the customer can finish it on their phone, their personal phone. They can finish it on a laptop or an iPad on the desk, however they want to finish it. They go through and finish it. And I have it spaced pretty, and the buttons are the right color so you can't accidentally, fat finger it and hit the wrong one. And if anything is wrong, When it goes back to the FFL, there's a big red X on the screen that says stop. There's an error. So if you use a system like that, you don't have any of those errors.
Where are those stored?
I make the FFL store them on their own because I don't want them.
So once the customer's done, like a PDF is on the would be on the computer of the FFL.
Right. They
Okay.
can do electronic storage with meeting certain regulations, or they can print them out and keep them printed. Now, another reason I don't store them, besides I don't want the privacy issue, I don't want to see your name because I own the company. So technically, if there's the data in there, I could, if I kept the 4473s, there's a way I might be able to see your 4473, and that's none of my business what guns you have or what you get.
Mm-hmm.
The other reason I don't want it is FFL Safe is free. It's like the worst business plan ever, but I like it because it's a little bit of a disruptive middle finger, if you will, to the rest of the industry. Like, fine, I'm going to make the cleanest, easiest to use. You just click like two buttons and the gun's gone. You don't have to click 18 buttons and back a screen to make sure you uncheck this and do this and scroll through all of this. I'm going to make it beautiful, clean, simple, 100% compliant, backs up to your computer within the law. And what these FFL software companies out there want anyway is the Ryan Cleckner stamp of this was vetted. So I'm the one that made it and designed it. And then we were thinking about charging like $5 a month. And I'm in it with a business partner that you know. And we just both looked at each other. We're like, for the $5 a month, for how much we got to do the credit card charging and build all that out, let's just make it free. So for the past year and a half, it's growing like crazy and it's free.
And then talk about the other business, the Rocket FFL.
So Rocket FFL is online courses that helps people get their FFL. And that's how I knew that FFL Safe was needed. That's how I knew that people needed the software. Is I got people set up the right way. So I helped them get over zoning. I helped them learn all the basic requirements. I made sure it's set up in a way that they won't get in trouble later with the ATF, and hopefully answer all the questions they have without having to hire me as an attorney. They can take a course that's less than $50 and get all their questions answered and get everything set up the right way. But then I realized I was just kind of like dropping them off. I had
Hmm.
follow-on courses if they wanted to pay for them for ATF compliance that are real deep dives into it. And so the way we made FFL Safe free, the software free, is we moved those advanced courses over to it. So you can have the software for free, but if you'd like to buy the course, great. And enough people buy the course that FFL Safe pays for itself. And I don't need to make a huge profit off of it. It's got enough to keep the lights on, keep the software running. Makes me happy.
I like it. What is like, so you've got all these different things going on. What's the best way for somebody to come support you, purchase from you the book?
Yeah, the books are great, or the courses.
Books.
So going to ryancleckner.com would probably be the best thing.
There we
On
go.
there, they can find my books. On there, they can find about Rocket FFL. They can find about Gun University and FFL Safe and everything else I do.
And spell the whole thing, sir.
Ryan Cleckner is, you think viewers can or listeners can do phonetic?
Do it.
Romeo Yankee Alpha November, Charlie Lima Echo, Charlie Kilo November Echo Romeo
Nice.
.com.
.com.
.com. I do that every time too.
I haven't actually done that in a long time, but that's pops in my head. I appreciate you taking the time to talk, man. It's
I
been a
appreciate you
while.
having me on.
I have been having this by the bedside, noodling through it.
I don't want to know that.
Uh, there's good article or good titles in here like funky bullet behavior. I was talking with some students. Remember Sniper, the movie with Tom Berenger? Of course you
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
Remember how he took his pocket knife and cut the X on top?
Yeah. He shaved too. He had a file and he like shaved the bullet.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I was having a group of students. I was messing with them. I told them to grab a bullet and we were all going to like increase the performance. And it's funny the things that as like children you think are real.
Yeah.
Parting words for those that tuned in, listened, watched. Uh, if people never cross paths with you, they don't meet you in this life, what would you leave them with?
Shooting or life?
Whatever, man. What would you leave them with?
I'm gonna cheat and I'm gonna answer both.
Oh,
For shooting, it's gonna be focus on the fundamentals, forget everything else, be safe and have fun, and you're going to get better.
Hmm.
That's the trick.
I like that.
Life is hopefully you have kids in the family because being a parent is the best thing ever. But be a good person. Bring other people along. I think the definition of leadership for me is a leader is someone who can make other people achieve something they couldn't normally achieve on their own. And I don't think you need permission to be a leader in life. So I think you can teach in books, you can teach life lessons through courses, you can teach things like that. And if you leave the world where people are better than they were, you did good.
I like that. I agree with that. I agree with that. I'm going to have to talk with you offline on some of that FFL stuff. You've tried to talk me into it in the past. I might have to do it.
It,
Haven't had to in the past, but
Here's my
but,
sales pitch. It's not for everybody. If some people don't need the hassle, and if you're not good with record keeping and it's not for you, that's fine. I never want to convince anyone to get one that I don't think should have one. But people like you, Mickey, yeah, I think it makes sense. It's easier to get
what do you mean
guns to and
people
from.
like me?
You know what I mean.
You people.
You people.
You gun owner people. I appreciate you. You guys that tuned in, I hope that you enjoyed it. If you are interested in learning to shoot your rifle better, these books are definitely a must-have on the shelf. You might as well buy two, give one to a shooting buddy. I guess I just found out I'm getting a commission too by this great sales pitch. I'm just kidding. But do go check out this guy's stuff. He's a great dude, great patriot, and an excellent shooter and writer. And as always, be well. Don't
Thanks
be
for having me on,
dickheads.
bud.
Oh, man, right in the middle of my closer. Go look up RyanCleckner.com. I wish that I had some hacking skills and could turn that site into some kind of like dudes in bikinis so that as
Too
people
late.
got on
Too
there.
late. It
Too
already
late?
is.
Visit our website, carrytrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., Carry Trainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@carrytrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@carrytrainer.com or carrytrainer.com.
Well, I sure hope that you guys dug this episode of the Higher Line Podcast. Ryan passed on a lot of good information. You know, I showed you guys these books during the interview. He didn't pay me to share these. He didn't give me these books. I bought them myself. I think that if you shoot and if you love the art of the rifle, you will get a ton out of those books. Please do check them out. As always, our podcasts are brought to you from our brand, Ignis Lux. Ignis Lux is Latin for firelight. We roast this coffee with love for you. And you guys may have noticed behind me, I've got these beautiful storage solutions for all the things that are very important to you. And today we've got this guy out. These are the Agile Safes from Securit. They come in different sizes. This one is actually called the Fast Box. And you've got fast access to get whatever it is you need in there. Be well. Don't be dickheads. Tell somebody you love them. And as always, walk a higher line. Peace.